All right, we have reached the destination. Officially only 2 sleeps away from the race, from the half marathon. Just picked up the bib, got to the location, staying in Ocean City, Maryland, racing the Coastal Delaware Half Marathon. It's part of the Coastal Delaware Running Festival this spring. Good excuse to travel when you have a race on the calendar. But yeah, feeling good, feeling great after the taper, which made a video about last week, so you can check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Everything feeling fresh, feeling nice. Hoping to get a good night of sleep tonight as well as tomorrow so that we're feeling nice and rested by the time race morning comes around. A little bit of a race kit layout here. Got a random black hat from Amazon. Just wanted one that would fit my big head. Going with the Tracksmith singlet. Going with the Tracksmith Reggie tights as well. I always like to race in toe socks. I feel like they just prevent blisters the most. So they do look weird when they're on your feet, but you know, don't knock it till you try it. These are pretty much like the lesser brand of the Injiji ones that are pretty well known, except these are cheaper, but still very high quality. And then of course the Goodr sunglasses. Ended up being a toss-up between the Adidas Adios Pro 3s and the Alphafly version 1s. Went with the Alphaflys because since November of 2022, I have PR'd the marathon and in the 5K in those shoes. So hopefully the half marathon in between those, they'll be just as effective. The final run begins. It is just after 8:30, the day before the race. It is Saturday. Woke up about an hour and a half ago. Got in the same breakfast that I'm going to eat before the race tomorrow. A little bit of a get the nervous energy out type of shakeout today. Just going about 30 minutes. Only focusing on taking it easy. And yeah, it is definitely humid. About 60 degrees out. This is pretty much identical to what the forecast for the race is going to be tomorrow. So this should pretty much simulate how I'm gonna feel weather-wise, conditions-wise, temperature-wise when it comes to the race in the mornings. Hope there's still a bit of a breeze because that nicely combats the humidity most of the time. But yeah, just a nice Ocean City, Maryland run here for the big day tomorrow. Oh. Classic dead end. Worth it though. So as I showed in my taper video, as I've talked about and implied some training update videos, this training block has been far from picturesque or perfect, you know, and it definitely changes the sort of psychology when approaching the race. I'm really excited for this race, a little less nervous for it than usual, but you know, I don't want to sandbag. But over the past probably month, I've pretty much revolved back and forth between a hip injury and a hamstring injury, both on my right leg. So it seems like every week one of them is bothering me a little bit more than the other, you know. In these last couple days of the training block of the taper, it's definitely the hamstring. We will try to sort of course correct those a little bit more after this race tomorrow. Definitely going to be a bigger focus approaching my marathon when it comes to mobility, strength training, stretching in general. I never stretch, definitely need to more. But yeah, regardless, I'm excited for the race, excited to see the result. Gonna give it all that I got, regardless of how I'm feeling in the morning. And yeah, I'm just excited to put down another race here in 2023. My Coros Watch race prediction for the half marathon, 13.1 miles. Currently 1 hour, 23 minutes, 45 seconds, which equates to about 6 minutes, 23 seconds per mile. And that's pretty much the training range I have used for half marathon pace. So this will be an interesting sort of case study in whether or not, for once, my Coros Watch prediction is actually in line with my current fitness, which it kind of was back in January with my 5K, but it's always been a bit generous with the marathon, so we'll see with the half marathon. Not sure you can see that, but 30 minutes on the dot, 3.5 miles. Shakeout is done. The race kit is selected. everything is set. There's only really one thing left to do. That's eat. No, just kidding. Let's have a good race tomorrow. Definitely gonna make sure I'm nice and hydrated. Just try to sleep a little bit before we try to throw down a fast half marathon time tomorrow. But yeah, it's been an interesting one when it comes to this training block. Let's see what happens. It is just after 5 o'clock right now. Woke up at about 4:30, being quiet because I don't want to wake anyone else up. But yeah, already had breakfast, which for me is a banana, 2 pieces of bread, drinking some electrolyte mix, and yeah, gonna head out here in about hour and a half or so to just kind of hang out by the start line because the marathon runners start a little bit before the half marathon runners, and beyond that, just chilling, relaxing until the start of the race. Slept very so-so. Wouldn't call it a great night to sleep. Wouldn't even call it really a good night of sleep, but I wouldn't call it a bad night of sleep. And looks like it's pretty humid out there. We'll see if we can handle that after training pretty much all winter. But yeah, excited.
Excited?
It's hot.
It's really bad.
Because of the sun?
Yeah. What are you going for today?
Hopefully I get home.
Okay. I meant your
I'm
time.
just trying to go home after this.
Yeah. Let's go, Connor! Yay! So then what happens when Connor goes to run is that I become his bag holder. I get myself a little coffee, supporting the local businesses. I take a little walk on the beach, and I set a timer and then go meet him back at the racing to get a good picture.
That's my day.
Come on, Connor! Woo!
What's your name? What? What is your name?
It is Monday morning, the day after the race, and I decided to let things sit, sort of simmer a little bit after the result, because obviously, as you can tell from the time, not what I was going for, right? I didn't achieve my goal, and a lot of times when you look at something like running, like sports and athletics that are so result dependent, that result and the sort of fallout of it is so binary. It's either you beat the time or you didn't, and oftentimes attribute the success of that to the result being a yes, you achieved it, or a no, you failed. And I think that's like a tough way to do it, especially for like hobby joggers or recreational runners who don't run for a living. You know, our livings are not made and lost by the result that we have or the place that we finish in the race, and sort of to ignore the whole entire process, the sort of longevity attributed with running, the training block that preceded it, and only look at that time as a measure for whether or not it was a positive experience is a tough outlook for it. And I want to sort of get away from that and be much more process based in the way I sort of reflect on these types of goals, instead of saying, you know, you should be disappointed in yourself because you missed your goal by a couple minutes. And in the grand scheme of things, a couple minutes, it's not going to decide my whole future of my running. It's not going to decide anything else that has to do with my life. I don't think I gained that perspective and had time to think about it until the next day, as I sort of looked back at it, as people were saying, great job out there. You did great. I think I came in 14th out of well over 1,200 runners. And that sort of broader perspective to say, okay, I still did well, even though the conditions were not what I prepared for, what I wanted, were far from ideal. I should be proud of myself for finishing that race in the first place. So yeah, I still would call it a blow up and a not mission accomplished when it comes to the race in general. A finish time of 1:28:53 which is not a time that I am impressed with when it comes to what I know I am capable of. I truly do think, again, you can't control weather, and you can't really use weather as a massive excuse because everyone else is running under the same conditions. But if things were more regular for what they typically are in the Northeast in mid-April, instead of being in the mid-60s and 100% humidity right away in the morning, I could have come a lot closer to achieving that goal of just PRing. You know, you can't change the past, you can't change the weather conditions that you're given, so it just kind of is what it is. I started off the race relatively well when it comes to the sort of first 10K or so. I felt like through halfway, I was definitely capable of PRing. I split my first mile at 6:26, my second mile at 6:26, my third mile at 6:23, fourth mile at 6:25, fifth mile at 6:28, and sixth mile at 6:31, seventh mile at 6:31. So you can see there that things started to get progressively a little bit slower after mile 5, but I thought I could kind of keep it right at that sort of like 6:30 range, which would have delivered me a PR probably after about 10K. I think I was projected to be in the 124s somewhere, and I was totally cool with that. My mile split for the first 2 miles, according to the race mats themselves, in terms of pace was 6:29. From mile 2 to mile 4, I was like 6:27. The way this course works is different than other courses and is very dependent on the weather conditions of the time. After, I would say, about 3.5 miles in, you transition from a pure road race to running up in the sort of northern portion of Rehoboth, Delaware, which is where Cape Henlopen State Park is, as well as some other state park areas. That the running route is totally comprised of crushed gravel, which when it is like sopping wet conditions like it was yesterday, preceded by a week with like pretty decent rainfall, portion of the course had like flooded sections of like couple inches of literal water that we had to run through, which made it almost feel like a cross-country race at times. It's just hard to get a good footing when that crushed gravel surface turns into something that feels more like moon sand. Like your every foot strike, you can't gain a ton of purchase, you're sort of sinking in. That tires you out even more, and I definitely started to feel more tired after about 10K in at about the halfway mark. After that pretty solid first half of the race, and that hamstring injury that I have referenced before started to sort of let me know that I was pushing myself a little bit, and it wasn't exactly happy with the surface underneath that I was sort of sinking into, and it's not exactly the straightest course when you get up into the state park area. It's not completely ideal for really fast running, despite it being a pretty flat course in general. The surface itself can be unexpectedly and underratedly tough. So after that sort of last 6:31 mile that I put in on mile 7, mile 8, my stomach started to feel a little weird. I didn't take any gels, any nutrition, any water with me on this race, but I did stop at one of the aid tables to pick up a drink of water and try to chug it down. I did that, and I don't know if it was because of the heat and the humidity. I passed this one, I think it's called Gordon State Park Pond, or Gordon Pond State Park, and it smelled like fish, it smelled like crab, and I spewed for the first time ever in a race. And from there, my stomach, not really like feeling sick, but after like spewing, started to cramp up. It was the first time I've ever thrown up in a race, and it was the first time I've ever gotten abdominal muscle cramps, and it was worse than any side stitch I've had before. It affected my breathing. It obviously slowed me down quite a bit. So after that 6:31 7th mile, put down a 6:35 for mile 8, and then I really slowed down from there. 6:51 on mile 9, and mile 10, slowest by far, 7:57. I had to stop and walk just to sort of try to like compose myself, catch my breath, make sure I was able to breathe and sort of move when it came to that sort of portion. And, you know, people were passing me that I had, you know, been running with or even passed earlier in the race. And it was completely demoralizing. I could have given up. I contemplated like pulling my phone out of my back pocket, calling Lauren and being like, hey, I don't want to finish this race. This fell apart completely. But I decided to sort of push on, recollect myself, ran a 7:09 6:09 on mile 11, 6:52 on mile 12, 7:04 on mile 13, and then the last sort of portion of the half marathon. Kicked a little bit for a 6:28, so I sort of brought it back together for that last portion of the race. Wouldn't call it a sprint finish by any means. Did not feel great. I am not incredibly proud of that time, but I am proud of the sort of like mental fortitude that I managed to hold on to when it came to the end of that race. Because again, when you train so hard for one result on one day, and you fixate on that. I think all runners can relate to that when they're training for a specific time, and you get to a point in a race where you know it is pretty much impossible for you to reach that goal at that point. It's so hard to motivate yourself to even finish at times. So the fact that I was able to kind of push on, keep going, I'm very proud of that. And overall, I don't know if I learned anything new from not succeeding in this race. Now, the first marathon I ever ran, the Jim Thorpe Marathon in PA, it was a May marathon. It was like 85 degrees and similarly extremely humid. At like 6 or 7 a.m. that morning, they had to even push the start time even earlier in the day to accommodate people. People ended up dropping out because of the heat. There were people who passed out on the course. Like, I've raced in really bad heat before, and I know that I am not good at it. I'm not a good warm weather runner. I'm not a good humid weather runner. I'm fine with training in it, but when it comes to trying to run fast in very high humidity, like, shout out to the Florida people, I can't do it. I simply am not acclimated to running in hot temperatures or running in high humidity. So I kind of knew that already going into the race. Wasn't super excited when I got done with my warm up, and my heart rate was pretty high for easy pace, and I kind of knew what I was in for to some extent, but I wasn't gonna not push myself to see what I could do. And yeah, the result just kind of is what it is. It's not a massive confidence booster as I head into these sort of summer training months to prepare for a fall marathon this coming fall. But again, there are positives to be taken away from it. I raced and pushed on despite the conditions and not feeling the best, dealing with a number of injuries during the training block, not having the best training block in general. I knew it wasn't the best training block coming into this race. My goals were lofty based on what I was able to do this training block. All in all, no, I didn't get the time that I was looking for, but I'm really not like devastated about it. And I look forward to really approaching this fall marathon with a lot of intention, with a very specific focus on that training block, trying to get everything right in terms of strength training, mobility, trying to do all the small stuff with nutrition, with sleep, with recovery, so that I can put myself in the best position possible. So that is, I think, all of my thoughts, post-race analysis, my thinking when it comes to Coastal Delaware Half Marathon, my first race of the 2023 year. Hopefully we have a better rest of our 2023. If you raced this weekend or last weekend, you raced Boston, if you were at the Coastal Delaware Marathon, whatever you might be doing, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're proud of all the great work that you have put in. And yeah, this has been another episode of Hobby Jogger Elite. We'll catch up next time. Peace.